faces. And so this is a supplemental webinar. We had one, I guess it was last week or the week before. Things are all blending in together, where we had, and that was co-presented by the Ministry of Education and the Federation of Independent Schools. And the focus on this one is really with the application form and going through that. I'll start by introducing the FISA team. Many of you would know Janet Donani. She's the Assistant Executive Director and a brilliant person and part of our team. And new to the FISA team this year, and specific as a project lead to the Feeding Futures, is Rocio Montenegro. And we're really pleased to have Rocio with us. And she has been just a wealth of support for schools going through this process. And I'll just give a little bit of background, because this is the Feeding Futures. It has some similarities to what you may have experienced last year with the SFAF, the Student and Family Affordability Fund. There was a model used to make those determinations. There wasn't an application process through that. And another difference is with the SFAF, you were able to assign some of that to fees and other things, whereas Feeding Futures is specific to food security within your schools. We're really pleased, and now we're up to nearly 40 participants. And at this point, I will pass it over to you, Rocio.
Hi, thank you, Sean. Thank you so much. And welcome, everybody. I know September is one of the busiest times for all of us as a principal. So I remember those days. So you know what? I'm really glad that you take some time today with to join us. I want to say also thank you to Janet and Sean that very kindly are joining me today. They will be supporting me a little bit on the chat. So I will recommend that if you guys have any questions, feel free to type it on the chat. And if it is specifically about a situation in your school, please feel free to write your name and your email, and we will follow up with you this week if it's something very specific about you. But they will be trying to help me with general questions. So thank you. I will start sharing my screen because I know we have a short period of time, and I want to go through all the part 2. So give me a sec. Let me start sharing. And perfect. Can you see my screen? Okay, perfect. So thank you so much. So just as Sean was mentioning, this webinar is more about the specific questions that are on the application. I start with part 1. Just a quick reminder to do about the part 1 is just about all the information from your school and the declaration that we suggest the principal should be, doing it. But I will pass right away to part 2. That will be the spending plan. This is where all the information that your school and how the money will be used is where we will be explaining. So you can see that for the sake of this webinar, I put some color coding into the different categories. Our application do not have that, but we will just make it that to make it easy to follow up today the webinar. I invite you that if you have right now your application and you are close to a computer, maybe you can tag along. And if no, don't worry, we will be having this in our gallery tomorrow. And I also gonna upload this in a PDF form so you can also follow through when you are filling up your application. So the first part that we're going to start, it will be the section 1, and that is the preliminary base grant. So in this part, you will be writing your notional allocation. The email was sent on August 29th. So but you're still not receiving, or you can still not finding your notional allocation, please feel free to reach out, and I will be happy to sort it out. So just send me a quick email, and I will find your notional allocation. So for this exercise, I will write that the notional allocation for my school will be 8,000. So you will enter the value that you have it there. And for some reason it's not, okay. Let me just double check, because for some reason it's not giving me the, yeah, okay. So I will continue, and then we will see. So after that, we will go for 1.2, and that will be if your school has a capacity to spend the full notional allocation. And my answer here, there is a menu, and you will say, in this case, yes, we are able to continue to spend this money. If no, you will have to write here the amount that your school will be able to spend, and that should be less than your notional allocation. So if that is your case in your school, I would recommend that you give me a quick call and we can chat a little bit about your specific situation. But if no, just continue with the rest of the application. Your preliminary base actually should be automatically entered. Sorry, for some reason, my application is not doing it right now, but I will enter. And it will be 8,000. And that means that it's exactly the same amount as my notional allocation. Moving on into the next part, that will be the potential section 2. Here are 3 different questions. The first one will be if your school wish to receive a top-up to the preliminary base grant if additional funds become available. So if your school would like to receive a little bit or a top-up, your answer should be yes. And if yes, are the potential capacity constraints within the school that will create a maximum grant amount that the school could effectively use in support of its school food program. If your school is willing to receive or is asking for extra funds, your answer in this question should be yes too. And we will chat a little bit about this and the relationship with SAF. But before I move on into that, I will move into question B. And this is if the maximum additional grant, if yes, what is the maximum additional potential grant, including your notional allocation, your school could effectively utilize in support of your school program? So here is very important that we will need to keep in mind that we need to add our notional allocation plus any amount that your school believes that will help to continue with this or to be part of this program. So for this exercise, I am adding 2,000 extra. So that means that I need to include my notional allocation, that will be 8,000, and extra. In this case, I will request an extra of 2,000. So I will have to add 10,000. And before I move on, I don't know if Janet maybe can support me here and help me between the difference on staff and feeding futures regarding the amount of the money that you need to put towards this section B.
Well, Rosia, there's one thing I did want to add, and so all of the schools receive their notional allocations, and I think it's reasonable, well, for sure, when they do apply the model, because we're going to go through a process of applications. Some schools that have an initial notional allocation may choose not to apply. And so that funding will go back in for distribution to the schools that have applied. So you could receive somewhat more substantial funding than what your initial notional allocation. So in this situation, if you would be open and available to that, and that you could use that, and that could support your Feeding Futures plan, then it is important to say, yes, we would be open to that. And then as to what that amount would be, well, if you receive 10,000, but you would like to, and there's a need there for 20,000, then you would say, no, we could use an additional. But it's important on that if you put that down, that you have the capacity to do so. So if you end up getting $20,000, but you say, geez, we really don't have the capacity or need for 20,000. We got 16,000. You know, that becomes a little problematic. So it really ties into something that you'll be speaking about later, Rocio, about the plan that they have.
Yeah, for sure.
That was great, Sean. I'll just add that one of the big differences is last year, the money of the schools that chose not to participate was donated back to the pot, and then that pot was just evenly redistributed. And most schools were able to easily spend the final amount, but some schools received more through that even distribution than what they were prepared to allocate to their school. And it actually caused them to be like, now what do we do with this money? So that's why this year you're going to look at your resources and decide about your maximum amount that you could receive. When you put it down, that doesn't mean that you will receive it. Again, it depends on how much money is returned back into the system from schools not participating. But what is the maximum that you have the capacity to spend in this school year? So there's a question in the chat that it doesn't need to be spent, and the answer is yes. By June 30th, you should have your plans to have that drawn down, excuse me, to zero.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sean and Janet. So just returning back to the application, in this case, after analyzing what is happening in my school or pretending school, I will only ask for a top up of 2,000 with a total of 10,000. So remember to include your notional allocation in this letter B. If we continue moving into the application, then we have section 3 that refers to other funding. And in this case, other funding could be parents already paying for some of the hot lunch program or any other sources that come to your school for the food program. And I will write for this exercise, I will write 3,000. And you will see that, and I will write, this is an optional for you to write, but I will write in this case that is done by donors. In your application, something is happening today with mine, but in your application, this cell will be automatically filled in. So that will be adding, as you can see, the 8,000 from my notional allocation or my preliminary base grant, and they will add the other sources that I have. And this will be, in total, will be 11,000. You won't need to do this math. The computer will do it for you. So don't worry about that. So just for this will be the total budget that you have, and it's important to remember that it will be adding notional allocation and your other sources. If your school do not have any other sources, the number that will appear here will be only your notional allocation. I know we talked a little bit touch base last week, and you can always go back to the webinar that Grant very kindly and Ministry of Education helped us to in the last weeks. But we want to touch base this time a little bit about the eligible spending that we have, and talk a little bit. So for this, it is important to remember that the main purpose of this funding is actually to feed the students who need it the most. One of the main things that is we're working and trying is to make it stigma free. So it's important that when you present your plan, you mention how you're going to make this happen. There is some spending that can be support culinary art programs, but the food that is produced on that program must be provided to the students that are in need. As well as the program delivery can be also involve third-party food providers or expand your contracts or your existing plan with them. So we are trying to encourage the schools to use and buy locally and operate the nutritious of your food programs. But we are just in year one, and we know that whenever it's possible, we encourage actually to do it. So I want to stop here and maybe touch base with Sean and with Janet regarding universal food programs. That has been a question that we've been having over these last weeks. So maybe we can chat a little bit more about that. Okay. You go ahead, Sean, please.
Oh, okay, absolutely. So when the universal food programs, it is really about context and scope. So if you have and there's so many different types of universal food programs that we're hearing about that exist within the independent school sector. So if you had a universal food program, or you thought that you would start a universal food program with the Feeding Futures, and it was to finance a school program where the model identifies that you have, you know, 10 kids that are experiencing food insecurity, and you have a school population of 40 kids, that might make sense for you to have a universal program, and just because of the size and the scope of that. If you were in a situation where you had an enrollment of 1,000 students, and the model kind of identified that you had 10, maybe 20, for you to run a universal program wouldn't make sense, because a vast majority of that program would be supplying food security for um, people that didn't have food security issues. So really it's about the context of your school. Some of the things that we've heard is that schools may have a program where they have all the parents, they do have a hot lunch program. All parents are charged a sum every year, say every month, $100. But now, so they do have a universal program, but there's some families that are in need, and that uh, perhaps paying that $100 would be a challenge for them. They don't want their children to feel any stigma associated with that. So that if you then use the Feeding Futures Fund to pay for those families to participate in that, that would meet the criteria within a universal uh, food program at your school.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much. I'm gonna keep moving on. And talking about staffing, we have to remember that the majority of the purpose of this fund is actually to provide food to the children. But however, it is, your school can use some funds for a very small percentage that can be allocated to staff cost. It's important later on in your spending summary that you describe what will be that percentage. And as Sean was saying, it will depend on the size of your school. It's a lot about context. So always feel free to write, and then we can, if there is any question from our side, we will reach out to you to have a better understanding of that. And the last spending will be, other kind of spending that could be small appliances. And for that, I have a few questions coming in these last weeks about larger appliances such as a fridge. If the fridge will help, for example, you're buying now milk or fruit, and you need a fridge to keep that food in good condition. That could be maybe an eligible spend. However, if you are buying, let's say, a stove or a couple stoves because you want to start a culinary art program, that may not apply for this fund. So just keep in mind about that when you are, writing the description of your plan. And the last one is grocery gift cards. That I know that last year with the SAF, we were, a lot of schools were using that, and we will talk a little bit more later, but it's also one of the eligible spendings for this year. So now we're gonna move into the spending summary, and this is the part when yeah, sorry,
I'm just
Janet.
going to interrupt you because we got some comments back and forth in the chat.
Oh, yes.
On a topic that you've already moved on from, and it is again, context matters, but it's the question around let's see, sorry, I've lost it. Here it is. sorry, did you say that if families pay for hot lunches, that we should be considering that as a funding source? And so this kind of is wrapped up into what is a universal program and what is not. So I know Sean's unmuted, so I'm gonna let him go the first on this one.
So just so to clarify the question, and I was just using an example of one school that has a meal program and they collect funding from parents. It's kind of a fee for them to participate, and I'm just using an example of $100 a month. And so the families volunteer to participate in that program, but you may have some families that, you know, it would be a struggle to participate in that program, the $100. Now you could use the Feeding Futures Fund to support them to participate in that program.
Yeah, but the question's a little bit different in
Okay.
that if the PAC runs a hot lunch program, and on some week, let's say there's 100 students in the school, and some week 70 of them participate, and the school collects that revenue and then it buys the pizza. And a different week, you know, it's nobody's really wants it and only 20 participate. If schools are expected to use this as a funding source, and if they're going to put it over here on the column that Lucia just passed by, it's kind of hard to calculate. So I guess the real question is, if it's that type of an activity, is it super important for this to be called funding from other sources? Or can we just tell schools, make your best guess? This is, if it's budgeted in your budget, that's a very easy number to come up with because you'll be able to see it in your budget. But if it's more optional, weekly, PAC run, where sometimes kids participate because they really like that choice that week and sometimes they don't, it's harder to get a number to put in that box.
Yeah, I think it would be, but I do think it's wise to make an estimate.
There you go, folks.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So now we're moving on into 5.1, that will be the spending summary. And this is where all the numbers that we've been doing here will kind of like take place now. And I will give you an example of this. So for the summary, we have three different categories in here. And we have the first one that is letter A, that is about the total project spending and food procurement. And for this exercise, I'm gonna make two different examples. The first one will be about a hot lunch program, or a program that a school that have already a food program in place. And the second one will be a school that will need, or that will use these funds this year for gift cards. So starting with the first example, regarding, I wanna remember that the summary will bring all the numbers or all the quantities that we use on top. So just to make a recap, my notional allocation was 8,000, and then I include 3,000 extra for other resources. And I also asked for 2,000 extra to top up. So this is kind of like the wish list. This is the dream number. This is when, if we got everything that we asked for, my total in this case will be 13,000. These 13,000, I need to explain how I'm gonna divide it among these three categories. For my first example, I will say that I will use a lot of my funds towards my food program, or to provide food to the children at my school. So I decided I will use 11,500 in my food procurement. I will use a total of 1,000 for my staff. So when I choose this number is because I will need to make a number regarding how much of the percentage of my staff is using. And I know this may sound lower, and of course nobody who is working will receive only 1,000 payment or a salary. However, remember that this is only a small amount that can be allocated to the staffing. So I will put 1,000. And the next one, or the extra money that I have, is 500 that I will put it there. And it will make sense a little bit when we go down to the next category, but at this moment, this is how I divide my 13,000. So just when you're filling out your application, please keep in mind that you need to add notional allocation, other resources, and also the top up of your request. And I move on now into 5.2, that is food partnership and production. So there are two different questions in here. The first one is about food providers and about organizations. So I just put some samples here that I've been getting, that are about catering, or you can put the name of your hot lunch programs, societies that you're working with. This is information for all of us to learn about what other schools are using and what they are doing, to help the community in all independent schools. So please feel free to share what are the organizations that we are using. And regarding food suppliers, I noticed a few people is been writing about the names of the stores. So if you're using stores like Walmart or Superstore or Costco, feel free to just write grocery stores instead of all the names of the stores. However, if you are, using local farms, or you're doing farmers markets, or, I received a very nice application about using a chicken farm for eggs and chicken, and also a milk farm. Please write your food suppliers here so we can have a database of what other schools are doing and using. Now moving on into the next category, that is 5.3, that is staffing. In this case, I would say that I will do 1,000 for my staff, and I just make an example saying that 40% of my full-time staff, and I will be using just 1.5 that will support the lunch program. That will make a percentage around of 3% of my staff. And remember, I go back again to say, these $1,000 are not going to pay for that salary. It's just a little bit of support for their salary. And then I move on into the next one, that will be the additional detail. As you can see, this is in pink, just like the first number that is here, because this is where you're gonna describe the other expenditures that you would decide to do. So in this case, for this exercise, I say that I will use only $500 in other expenses. So I will have to show in this part how I'm gonna distribute these $500 in these three categories. So for this exercise, I say that I will use 300 on small appliances, maybe a rice cooker or a crock pot to make some soup for my school. I won't use any grocery carts, and I will use $200 to buy some seeds for my cooking garden, because we are, planning to make some soups, and then we're gonna buy some, seeds to plant it on my garden. So that's how I will, this number and this number will make sense and should be matching, okay? So now, before I move on into the next questions, I want to touch base and go back to the second example that I think is important, that may cover some of the questions that some schools been having. If I go back again to my spending summary, and now I am a school that this year will provide maybe a big chunk of the fund will be going towards grocery carts. The way that I will divide my spending summary will be a little bit different. This time, remember that my example is 13,000. So what I did is I will use only 2,000 for a snack program. So that means that only 2,000 of the money that I have will be used to really procure food to the children on site. Maybe some snacks, maybe some fruit, maybe having some yogurt, but I only gonna use 2,000 of those 13,000. And the rest of my money, I will have to put it in other spending. So other spending will be 11,000. So at the end, I check that these two quantities match my total, that is this. And now I will go back into my additional detail. And I remember that I have to match this number among these three categories. So because my school is using is using a lot of this funding towards food security, I will write here 11,000. So I put it in red, so we can see that these two, there is nothing else, no other spend here and no other spend here. We only have this expenditure here, and it's gonna be matching this part. So now I know that 2,000 are going towards food procurement and 11,000 are going to gift cards. So that will be kind of like the two examples, and I know every school is very unique. This is kind of like a very general for, you know, what we've been receiving. I don't know if Janet or Sean have any other comment among this one, or no? Okay. So now we're going to move a little bit into my favorite part of the application. And it's been a pleasure reading the applications that already some school leaders has been giving us. So it's amazing to see how how creative school leaders are in this part. And this part, you know, 5.5 is where you're gonna describe and give us details about how you're planning to spend this money. You will have to include also here if you are getting some extra funds, what you're gonna be using, and it's important that you mention how you're gonna make sure that this is stigma free. So I write just few examples of what I've been receiving. Of course, we appreciate when you give us more details about your plan, so that helps us to understand better the context of your own school. So for example, I have some schools saying that they will have a hot lunch, and they already have a hot lunch at school, and they will provide some vouchers to the children. You know, they will keep it confidential, and then the children will be receiving, or the families will be receiving the vouchers. Previous that to get, you know, the children can go to the cafeteria and get some lunch. They also, some of them say that they will enroll it online in the food program that they already have. So they will be receiving, as Sean was mentioning before, they will be covering the cost, and then they will be receiving the lunch at the same time.
Yeah, Rosia, maybe
Yeah.
I just go a little more in depth on that one. So
Yeah.
that's when some schools have third party meal
Yeah.
providers, and so all families have the opportunity to participate in that. And in situations where a school has identified a family in need, what they will do is they will fund that, but the parent will, from home online, will order their lunch, and the food will be delivered by the third party. It shows up just like any other kid that would, or family that would have ordered. So that's another example.
Yeah. Thank you, Sean. Thank you so much. We also, some schools are planning to, you know, they already have a hot lunch program, but they would like to maybe have a snack program when they will be keeping yogurt or fruits in the staff, and they will be available for the children who arrive with no hungry in the morning or without the opportunity to have breakfast. Of course, there are some of the schools that are deciding to go for grocery store cards, that, you know, are planning what is the best time for them to share. And there are different ways that the schools are reaching out to the families, maybe through a survey. Maybe they know already from last year, they have some data about that. So it's, you know, you guys know the best who will be your families that need it the most. There are some other options about buying some seeds for cooking, for the cooking gardens, or, you know, and using some of this money. Remember that it could be only, also it's not for the big cost. You cannot create a garden with these funds, but you can support the garden that you have to buy more seeds and to maybe have a bigger harvest for making some food. And also maybe buying some appliances like toasters or cutting knives, so, you know, like things to provide and to make food for the children. And then I know my time is almost running, and I won't be going through the next questions in detail, but I want to just touch base very quickly about them. The next one will be, and how your school will you sorry, how will your school use your the meal program to support First Nations students on reserve, off reserve, and any other Indigenous student who is experiencing food insecurity. And in this one, please, most of the time is related to the plan that you already submit. So you can always just refer to that one. And also, please let us know if you do not have any First Nations or Indigenous students enrolling in your school. If you could please let us know too. That is always good. And the next three questions that are you know, the increase of the local food as well as nutrition. It always, you know, we are asking this to really get more information. However, your school will not be assessed based on this. So this is, as we've been mentioning, this is a 3-year program, and we are trying to just, this is the first year where we are just trying and bringing awareness to these kind of things. So if you are, if you kind of start making some changes through your school and start buying more local food and, connecting with other people, and I will be happy also to, maybe get some resources for you guys to connect with people that you can buy locally. But it's not going to be that won't affect your school application. And just regarding about nutrition, I have very good examples from some schools saying that they are going to try their best this year to maybe reduce baked products, or maybe use granola bars that are less sugary. So you can always have some options there. Maybe some of the schools are saying we will provide more veggies, or we will provide more fruits instead of or instead of like fruit bars or something like that. So it's always just to keep in mind when you are doing your shopping or you are doing your plan, to just keep that things in your mind behind, to just be more aware of that. And the last one will be, if you are already like if you are tracking or not. You can also choose from the options, and as I mentioned before, you won't be assessed based on this answer. Finally, moving on into the section 6, that is the community engagement. We would like to know, who are you connecting with? And this is also information for us to just learn more about what each school is doing. So feel free to let us know, who and how you are connecting with them. A lot of the responses that I've been getting is basically right now we are connecting just with our community, our first community, like our community in the school, and that's the first step probably for some schools. If you are connecting with other institutions or other organizations outside, please also let us know, because it's a very good information for us to know. So this is well, before I actually move on and I give the word, the part to Janet, maybe to touch base at the end, I want to just go back to like the last part, that is part 3, that is the online survey. When you click here, you want to receive the online, and I want to mention that is not connected to the application. So this online, it goes to a different database. So I will please remember to download your workbook and send this to my email. So my email is rocio@fisabc.ca. I will put it in the chat in a second. So if you submit your survey, doesn't mean that you submit your application. So both of them are separate documents. So feel free that, don't remember to download it and send it to my email to be able to just have it. So Janet, I don't know if I missed anything, if we should be touching base. I'm going to stop sharing, and then maybe I will be able to see the chat. Thank you so much for taking care of the chat, because I was trying to not get distracted. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Just a couple of things. So there is a request, could we extend the timeline? And the answer is no, unfortunately. Government wants to get this money to schools no later than November 30th. And in order to do that, we need to stick to the October 9th turning in, because remember, all the money that is not used by the schools that choose not to participate has to be rerun through all sorts of formulas. So there is no extension allowed. If you're not sure, then accept your notional and go move on, or say no thank you for this year, but unfortunately we can't extend the deadline. The other question I just want to reiterate, not question, but what Rocio spoke about, if you're asking for more money, that is fine, please ask. It's never hurtful to ask, but your spending plan has to match up with what then you are asking for, because we need to be reassured that if you get $10,000 extra or $7,000 extra or $300 extra, that you have a mechanism for spending that in line with the criteria. So when you're, as Rocio tried to show on the highlighted boxes, make sure that you do your math at the end, that you have all your text and all of your answers, but that the numbers all add up to the amount that you are requesting. And Sean, you're back if you want to say any of your and remember, folks, do this.
Yeah, No, I appreciate Rocio going through that, and I've been actually just going and trying to respond to some of the questions. A few of them, like how do and I understand this. How does a school determine the need? And I do think your family's best. Most independent schools have tuition some of the families that struggle with tuition, that might give you a sense. Some schools have asked for self-reporting, and I do think that I would have faith in that self-reporting unless there was something that came up that you became aware of, and then you would deal with that. But it is not something where we're asking schools to participate in some type or ask their families to participate in some type of means test. That's not the case at all.
Thank you, Sean.
So the last question is a great one. Can you have Rocio look at your plans before submitting? And the answer is yes. Rocio is here. Rocio has the enviable position inside FISA of she's a single portfolio holder. So she is primarily for Feeding Futures. And she is already very busy, but she would be fine to be busier because she wants to help schools to get this right. So don't hesitate to reach out.
No, and if you already submit your application, and I see some of the people who've been already, I see already your applications, and you want to change, or now that you have more information, feel free to resubmit it, and just I will be happy to delete the other one, and save the other one in a different file. And also, just feel free to give me a call or send me an email and say, hey, can you help me with this? And I will be happy to go through the numbers again with you if you have any questions. And absolutely, I can check your applications and go from there. So yes.
And in regard to the grocery store gift cards, we do want to start thinking about the schools that operate on a brick and mortar and they see students regularly versus the distributed learning schools where you're perhaps having blended classes where you see students, but it's not the same model. So at this point, government is certainly asking brick and mortar schools to be building programs where you can be the deliverer of the food in your school. And so that's why they are asking to have a plan for moving away from grocery store gift cards. But that might be a different conversation around the distributed learning schools. So if you're a DL school and you're worried about that, then we'll take that as a unique context, because again, context matters. Sean, in the morning you said context, and then you had a second one where you just wanted to remind people scope, the size of your school, the difficulty in being stigma free when you're perhaps smaller and everybody kind of identifies so and so as eating something or not eating something.
Yeah, and really this is a baseline year for Feeding Futures, and you will be hearing a lot more from Rocio throughout the year as she participates in a provincial collaborative with all 60 school districts and their leads on Feeding Futures. And so we're really this will be a learning year, and Rocio will be presenting the findings and sharing the findings of how this program is going with the independent schools. And I've already learned a whole lot more about this and the creative ways that schools are meeting those needs in our community. But this is really a baseline year. So as mentioned by Janet, the gift cards, that kind of aligns with what a lot of schools did last year. And but once you're presented with other opportunities that may be more effective, that might change in the second year. But as far as context, like online schools, I think certainly the government recognizes, like you have people, students, and you have staff all around the province. So maybe gift cards will continue to be the best option to meet those needs for all 3 years. So we'll see.
And I'll just answer questions as they come through. Is the goal to feed families or students? At this time, it's to feed students. That doesn't mean that if a family also is able to benefit or to get food, that's fine. But the primary focus is on children and equipping children to be able to learn by removing one of the barriers to being able to participate in the classroom, which is when you're hungry, none of us are generally at our best.
Brad, I will get back to you, yeah, for the survey. I know it will be difficult for online schools to reply to that one. So yeah, don't worry. I will get back to you.
And on that note, there are 2 separate submissions. You need to submit your survey, and we're asking you to submit your survey before you do your submission of your spreadsheet, mainly so you don't forget the survey later on. So you're going to attest that, yes, I've done the survey, and then you're going to send Rocio the completed spreadsheet. Both have to be done. Pushing submit on the survey will not generate the spreadsheet to Rocio. You have to do 2 steps.
Thank you so much.
So I think we'll sign off and let everybody have their Monday afternoon. It's beautiful where I am. I hope that it's also beautiful in whatever way in yours, but can't stress it enough. Rocio is here to help you. If you have any question, you can email her or give her a call, and she'll get back to you.